And for a closer look at President Donald Trump's diagnosis and U.S. politics, we're joined by Dr. Evan Resnick, Assistant Professor of the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Dr. Resnick, thanks for joining us this evening. So the question is, what sort of impact will Mr. Trump's infection have on his image and his campaign for re-election here?
I figure it's going to have an extremely detrimental effect on his image. His campaign is premised largely on the notion that the coronavirus is no big deal, and it's going to disappear, and no one should worry, and the economy should open up, and everyone should go to school. All the kids should go to school. But suddenly he's been diagnosed with it, as has his wife. So this sort of runs at loggerheads with what he's been trying to tell the American people.
And do you think the positive test for the virus will also just sort of add to the criticism, if you like, of the administration's handling of the pandemic so far?
Absolutely. It just plays into the conventional wisdom, which is that his administration has completely botched the U.S. response to the coronavirus crisis. So this is just sort of the ultimate manifestation of that, of the administration's inability to manage the pandemic. The president and his wife have come down with it.
Well, then the next question is, what will the Trump team and their rivals say now about this postal voting in place of voting in person?
I don't think this really changes matters. The voting has already begun in several states. Early voting has begun. President Trump has harshly criticized postal voting, even though he does it himself. He votes from his home in Florida, so he does it by mail. But he tells everyone else that it's not a good idea. And there's some signs that this has been a problem for him, given that a lot of his support in Florida consists of senior citizens who can't otherwise easily go to a voting booth. But yeah, I don't think it has an impact one way or the other on postal voting.
And how do you see sort of campaigning playing out going forward then? We know that he'll have to be quarantined in the White House. Do you see that sort of drawing to a close, if you like, the debates that are scheduled, the vice presidential debates, as well as the two further presidential debates, as well as just the general campaigning in the run-up to the election in November?
Well, given that he's likely to have to quarantine for a week and a half at least, 14 days, 2 weeks, that's half of the remaining time before the election. And President Trump has done a lot of in-person campaigning, which is not a very good idea from the perspective of public health, but it's a strategy that he feels more comfortable with, and that's got to end. So his campaign has not been nearly as tech savvy as his opponents. Former Vice President Biden's campaign has been largely online with very little in-person campaign appearances. So Trump is now at an even greater disadvantage than he was already, where he's been behind quite considerably in the national polls.
Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Dr. Evan Resnick from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies.